The Sims 1 was the game that let you live your dream life. Unless your dream life included setting the house on fire, getting robbed every other night, and watching your sim have a breakdown because they couldn't get to the toilet in time. We all remember The Sims 1 as a fun, chaotic sandbox, but here's the thing, most of us never really played it in the way Maxis intended. We weren't supposed to spam Rosebud until we had infinite money, ignore careers, and turn our houses into psychological experiments. But we did, and that's why it was so amazing. And let's be honest, we've all done some questionable things in the original Sims, like removing the pool ladder just to see what happens, because apparently our childhood selves were low-key psychopaths. But hey, we still turned out fine. Well, most of us did, and I mean, we just found a solution for a complex problem. It wasn't really our fault for designing the game like that. And if that wasn't enough, plenty of us took over existing families just to kick them out, bulldoze their house, and sell everything for quick cash. Because why struggle to make money when you can just delete an entire family's existence and profit? So today, we're looking back at The Sims 1, why it was way harder than we remember, and how, technically, we all played it completely wrong, and loved every second of it. If you actually try to play The Sims 1 the right way, no cheats, no taking over some poor Sims family life work, just pure hard work, you quickly realized how brutal this game actually was. Jobs didn't just mean showing up on time. You had to grind skills, maintain friendships just to get promoted, and if your sim was in a bad mood, they'd flat out refuse to go to work. Imagine calling your boss like, "Yeah, I'm too sad to come in today." That's getting you fired in real life too. Honestly, The Sims 1 was ahead of its time with that one. And let's not forget the absolute nightmare of basic survival. Your sim's energy bar plummeted faster than your motivation on a Monday, fun levels were in a constant state of emergency, and if you didn't micromanage every single bathroom trip, well, let's just say that carpets weren't staying clean for long. And that's assuming your sim even made it to work without setting the kitchen on fire, passing out in a hallway, or getting depressed into unemployment. Because we all know that happened a lot. The Sims 1 wasn't just a life simulator, it was a survival horror game in disguise. Even though The Sims 1 was marketed as a fun life simulation, it sometimes felt a little too real, but not in the way that developers probably intended. Later Sims games introduced quality of life improvements that made progression smoother, but the original game, it punished you for poor planning, forced you to juggle responsibilities, and constantly reminded you that life is just an endless, exhausting grind. And the best part, it wasn't even trying to be that realistic, it just kinda happened. If you played the original Sims back when you were a kid, you probably had your fair share of adulthood by now. The more I think about it, the more I realize that we had a sneak peek into adulthood. Like, remember when you were a kid and couldn't wait to grow up just to do everything you wanted? Well, Sims 1 tried to warn us that all that freedom will be paid in constant burnouts, crappy sleep, and random meltdowns. Most games give you a fair shot at success. The Sims 1, not so much. It wasn't just a life sim, it was a chaotic mix of bad AI, brutal game mechanics, and random disasters that could wipe all your progress in an instant. It didn't matter how well you planned at some point, the game was going to find a way to ruin your day anyways. The first burglar encounter probably traumatized an entire generation of kids, myself included. I still remember the rush of panic trying to wake up my sleeping sim while the burglar casually walked off with all the nice things I spent hours grinding for. Like the game didn't prepare you for it in any way, and we all learned that lesson the hard way. Let me know in the comments if your first burglar encounter caught you off guard and how much it freaked you out. And don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video so far, as it really helps the channel grow. House fires in The Sims weren't just a possibility, they were an inevitability. If you had a cheap stove and no cooking skills, congrats, you were literally playing with fire. And the game didn't take it easy on you either. One wrong move and suddenly your kitchen was an inferno. Your Sims were running around screaming instead of doing anything useful, and if you forgot to buy a fire alarm, well, enjoy watching your house burn to the ground. It didn't matter if you were just trying to make dinner. The second those flames appeared, you knew that things were about to get horribly wrong. Please tell me if your first house fire turned out into a full-blown disaster, because I know mine did. It got to a point where I straight up refused to buy a stove. My Sims were permanently condemned to a diet of microwave dinners and quick fridge snacks. Not because I wanted to, but because it was the only way to guarantee my house wouldn't spontaneously combust. It wasn't just a skill, it was a death wish. And the worst part, you never saw it coming. One second your sim was happily going about their day, and the next electrocuted mid-repair or drowning in a pool with no escape. It wasn't just bad luck, it was the original Sims reminding you that life is cruel, unforgiving, and sometimes ends because you placed furniture in the wrong spot. Most games gave you a warning, a second chance maybe, even a way to fix your mistakes. The Sims, it just hit you with the Grim Reaper and moved on. Maybe that's why build mode was so tempting in the first place. Let's be honest, a lot of players weren't here to live out a realistic life. We just wanted the freedom to design and decorate our own dream houses without worrying about bills, jobs, or Sims literally dropping dead. Actually keeping your sim alive in the house you just built, that was secondary, and given how brutal the game was, it was often like a chore. Between managing hunger, exhaustion, and an unreasonably high chance of random death, the life simulation part of The Sims could feel more stressful than fun. So of course, most of us skipped the struggle and went straight to the fun part, building, decorating, and turning our Sims into millionaires with a single cheat code. For a game that was supposed to simulate life, The Sims often felt like a glitchy sitcom. Nothing worked the way you expected, and when things went wrong, they went really wrong. But somehow, that just made the experience even more memorable. The Sims was full of unintentional comedy. Your Sims would casually set themselves on fire while making dinner, refuse to move because another Sim was blocking the doorway, or just stand there, helpless, as their house burned down around them. But at some point, we stopped playing The Sims the way Maxis intended and started experimenting. We built elaborate death traps, removed pool ladders just to see what happens, and trapped Sims in tiny rooms just to watch them slowly lose their minds. The game was supposed to be a life simulation, but we turned it into a chaotic social experiment. And maybe that's why the original Sims was so special. It wasn't trying to be funny, but it somehow became one of the most funniest games ever made. Every little flaw, every weird AI quirk, every ridiculous moment just made it more fun to mess around with. I mean, based on how hard the game is if you want to play it the right way, all the intentional and unintentional silliness that came with it was well welcomed. The first Sims remains the most iconic entry in the series, and is largely thanks to its brutal grind and unforgiving nature. It wasn't just a life simulator, it was a constant struggle to keep your Sims alive, happy, and financially stable. And that challenge made every small victory feel rewarding. Whether it was finally affording that expensive couch after weeks of in-game work, or somehow keeping a Sim alive despite their self-destructive tendencies, The Sims made you earn every moment. But as the series evolved, it started moving further and further away from the original formula. Each new game softened the edges, making money easier to earn, Sims less demanding, and disasters less punishing. Sure, these changes made the experience more accessible and less stressful, but they also took away some of that unpredictable chaos that made the first game so legendary. The later games pampered you where the original Sims kicked you in the teeth. In Sims 2 you got aspirations and wants to help you guide your progress. Sims 3 gave you an open world and more freedom. And by the time we got Sims 4, things like emotions, automation, and easier money-making options made it possible to coast through the game with minimal effort. Fun? Sure, but it didn't quite hit the same. And that's why people still talk about the first Sims. It wasn't just a game you played, it was a game you survived. At the end of the day, the game was a cultural phenomenon. It didn't just sell well, it defined an entire genre and proved that a game didn't need combat, an open world, or traditional story to be engaging. With over 11 million copies sold, it became one of the best-selling PC games of all time, paving the way for every life simulation game that followed. The franchise is still going strong today. Sadly, we won't have a Sims 5 anytime soon, thanks to corporate greed, but The Sims 4 is still receiving updates, expansions, and has a massive player base even years after release. But here's the thing, nobody actually played the original Sims the way Maxis intended. It was supposed to be about careers, relationships, and progression. Instead, we turned it into a sandbox of chaos, psychological horror, and interior design fever dreams. And somehow, that's what made it unforgettable. Later Sims games became more polished, more forgiving, and more player-friendly. But The Sims 1 had that wild magic that made every session unpredictable. Whether we played it as a life simulator, a survival horror game, or just a way to mess with virtual people, we all have stories from The Sims 1. And that's why we still talk about it today. The original Sims didn't hold your hand. It threw you into chaos and watched you struggle. And that's exactly why we still remember it. Thanks for watching and see you on the next one.